And so God led me toward the story of Exodus. The story of Exodus, for all of us who have heard or even possibly seen the remake movie that they did a terrible job Hollywood with the story of Exodus, and them having white actors play Black Egyptians, it led me to see basically that there was a lot of similarities with Alpha and also with Egypt, or the story of Exodus. In Egypt, for those who may know, is in similar position of Babylon. When you see Babylon in the Old Testament, that is basically a precursor for what is considered Egypt, especially in the way that Egypt had its demise during the early, I think it was either 9th or 10th centuries, with a lot of the dynasties falling to, of course, European attacks. And so when it came down to me studying the story of Egypt, we all know that Moses originally was an Israelite or Hebrew, but he was raised as an Egyptian because his mother sort of like gave him up for, not adoption, but gave him up so that he would not be killed by Pharaoh, who was killing off all of the male heirs or the male Hebrew or Israelites that were young or babies, because he wanted to genocide all of the men which was in the Hebrew or Israelite society. And so Moses was raised as an Egypt man, or as an Egypt prince, as what we saw in Prince of Egypt that Disney Pixar came out with back in the 90s. And so until he had his epiphany that, of course, God is going to show us who we are eventually with our personal identity, he killed an Egyptian that was beating down an Israelite, a slave servant at the time, because he saw that they were submitting them to like abusive behavior to the point of almost killing the slave or the Hebrew at the time. And so after he killed him, he fled after one of the other Hebrews had pointed him out, like, aren't you going to kill that Egyptian like you killed the other Egyptian the other day? Like basically dry snitching on Moses. And so Moses thought that he would be found out, so he decided to flee Egypt. And that story was very similar to my experience, because I was able to be taken out from the U.S. and even Kennesaw State University's campus so that I can get in the Word of God. And so we know the story of Moses after he left Egypt. Of course, he started a family. Of course, he was able to grow older and wiser, but God had called him to come back to Egypt or Babylon to again set his people free, or set his captives free. The things that stood out when he came back to Egypt that I saw from my own eyes was that Moses was given miracle signs and wonders through the staff that he was given to show that miraculous power of God, and that the Egyptians had literally different sorcerers, Janes and Jambres, or Johannes and Jambres, that were also able to perform some of the same signs and wonders that Moses had done with his staff, because they were sorcerers, they were diviners, they were individuals that were able to again show counterfeit, not miracles, but counterfeit powers to what God's original and professed power is.